Hey, this is a really special podcast. I'm really excited to be here. I'm sitting between two of my really close, my best friends. You guys obviously know Matthews. He's my co-host on this podcast, Bellwethers. And right here next to me is my former co-host on a podcast that we were a part of called A Beautiful Waste. And we're calling this a collaboration. We're calling it, what was it?
Beautiful Bell.
We're calling it Beautiful Bell. And we're coming to you really excited about this one because we honestly don't know where this conversation is going to go. We said that we're taking the cuffs off and we're going to talk about anything.
We're taking the what off?
The cuffs.
Okay.
Like our cuffs. We're taking our cuffs off and we're talking about anything and everything. Okay. Nothing's off limits on this podcast. I think you're going to enjoy this one because we're just going to be laughing most of the time. I think we're just going to be making jokes most of the time.
Yeah.
I think we're just going to be talking just life about each other. And obviously we have Abeyson from our standpoint. We have Abeyson on the podcast. But
yeah, he came all the way from India
just for this.
Just for this,
just
you know?
For this
I was like, hey bro, we need a pod. He was like, oh no, I'm getting the next flight. We flew him in business class and all. So
Bellwethers.
Bellwethers.
Does it big.
We do it big. We treat our guests really well, you know. And on this one though, he's also going to have it on his Beautiful Waste one too, right? So it's going to be more of like going back and forth. We'll obviously, me and Matthews will ask you questions and we'll just kind of be like open
you can
format.
ask us questions too, you know.
Yeah, whatever
let's do it.
You feel like.
What does Beautiful Bell mean?
Let me see. Let me get my theological.
You know what this reminds me of? The last time we all did the podcast, like, you know, on Zoom.
The Zoom.
Yeah, that was like really fun because like we went out for like an hour and a half, something
Did
like that. And I was like, okay, guys, you know, we gotta stop. You know, we got too much time. And I did say like, you know, we'll do part 2. And I mean, we gotta get sooner than
part 2.
This might be our longest podcast. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, watch Steve John's podcast. It's actually very good. It's an hour long, but it's very good. This might be, I don't know. That's for yourself to decide, but it might be an hour long, but I don't know if it's as good as Steve John's podcast, so definitely watch Steve John's. That's all I came here to say, is for you to watch Steve John's podcast.
Hey, what's the title of Steve John's podcast?
Steve John.
Shout out to Steve.
As of right now, that's what my Spotify tells me. Steve John. That's it. Like no topic,
nothing. Just entitled Steve John.
Steve John. Yeah.
You make the assumption what the content will be about. But we're here, and so I guess we'll just kind of talk about some general questions. I guess Abby, I just want to ask you, how has your journey in India been? What is it like? How does it feel for you? And what is God speaking to you right now in this season of your life?
Journey in India, I think like it started from like when it was 2019 April or 2019 May. So almost 4 years now, right?
Wow.
So 4 years of, I was just kind of remembering that of how when I was going there, I really did not know if I would connect with the right people, because you know they say people make the place, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's always been a struggle for me, especially in the Indian context, because I always felt like the odd one out in a way. Like I would think differently, I would do things differently. I didn't really feel like people around would be in my wavelength or think like that or all that, you know, so many assumptions that I had. But even from like the very beginning, almost like the second day that I was in India, God just put some amazing people in my life that even right now, like that's the best part about India for me, is the people that God put in my life. So I think it's been great. Very like, I didn't have a grid of what I was getting into when I did get into it or when I stepped out, you know, because we talked about before I went, you were like, what are you going to do there? Yeah. Even for me, I call one of my friends in Delhi. I'm like, hey, bro, can you find me a place to stay? And he said, oh, I have an extra room in my place. So all I knew was I'm going to go there and maybe just sit in that room for like a month or two and pray and then maybe come back. I don't know. Like, but it's been 4 years and it's amazing how the wonderful people that God put in my life over there and my wife over there, you know, God brought my wife to me at that season of life. And I mean, to be honest, if God would have told me that I would find my wife in India, I would have not gone to India, because I'm like, you know how that stereotypical like parents kind of send you to India to find a girl or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But then God has his ways. I mean, obviously, he didn't take me there just to get married. Like, even the people that I got to be in connection with ministry, with face to face, with Bridge Music, with Brazen Grace Church, where I serve right now, and, you know, all the other people that I come across, man. I think that's my favorite and the most thing that I'm grateful for is the people that God put in my life, and that makes it all worth it. And in this journey of just being with people and talking to them, and there were times where I thought people would not understand me, but there's so many things that I got to learn just being there, being around them, and it's been beyond what I can ask, think, or imagine. So
I think it's more of a stepping out of the boat thing for you for the last 4 years.
For
right?
sure.
Just to get into the storm, you have no idea, going to a place that you've not been a long time, and you're just walking in, you're like, oh no, what am I doing? What's happening? And then you see doors of favor open. Yeah. And I think that's really amazing, you know, just to see that how God is like, God values obedience. It's like, we just put up the obedience reel for Steve John today, and it's the same thing, like, you know, I mean, feel like, you know, it's just stepping out of there, just obeying God, just following what he said. I think that's just beautiful.
But I think the crazy thing about your testimony is because I'm always a person that wants like every single thing mapped out. Like there's one thing when God gives you direction and then you're obedient, and then there's like where you just go with, I don't know where the Lord is leading me, but I'm just gonna say yes, you know. And I think that's like similar to like what your experience was going into India, because I remember I literally asked him every time, because first of all I missed him so much. I was like to have a friend in ministry, it's like it goes beyond just having like a best friend. Like it's like literally someone you can do life with, but also someone you're like doing ministry with, and you're actually in the trenches doing life and ministry together. But I remember
and record podcasts before podcast was a thing.
Oh yeah,
we literally recorded a podcast in that room. Yeah, like what, in 2016?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like before it was a thing.
Oh yeah, I remember
we
you
were
telling
just
me that.
randomly just sitting, and we were like, let's just record this, let's just talk.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we're still doing that.
I know we have some unreleased podcasts that's
unreleased or even lost
somewhere there in the universe.
Right.
Yeah, but no, like I just remember always asking him, I'm pretty sure you were like probably even got annoyed after a while. Like all these people are just asking me, what am I gonna do when I get to India? And all these things, and the reason why I even asked you those questions was because at that time, even just seeing your journey in India and how much God did come through, and he pulled through so many ways, like so many incredible experiences, people that you've met, you know, like that, we cannot define that only by what God has done in your life and God's hand in your life, right? But first going there, I was always asking you, dude, what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna stay? Like, what ministry are you gonna be plugged in with? Who are the people? Like, what are your funds? What is this and this and this? And his answer would be like, bro, I'm just going, bro. And I internally as a friend, I was frustrated at you, because I was like, bro, no, you can't just go there and just say, I'm not having any of these things figured out before you go. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
It didn't make sense to me either. It's like I would say that out loud, but in my mind I'm like, it makes no sense. Like, you know, but the funny thing is, God put this thought of going to India in my heart in like 2018 May. And I took the step of actually doing it in 2019 April, almost like May, okay? So it's not like, oh, God said go and I'm like packing my bags today and like leaving. It took me a whole year. Basically, first of all, I started out with like, God, no. First of all, I started out with like, maybe it's just a conference high, because all of this started in Upper Room Conference, because I was part of like the conference that time. And all of this started there. I'm like, no, maybe it's just a conference high. It's gonna fade away. I'm hoping it would fade away, because I didn't want to go to India. I was happy with my life here, you know. But it didn't like happen overnight. It's not something that I'm like, oh, God told me I'm just gonna do it. And many of you who might be listening to it is like, oh man, he has such great faith and he just moved to the country. I'm like, it took me a year for God to convince me. A year, not a day, not a month, not a week, a whole year for God to convince me of this thing that, you know. So like to answer your thing, right? whenever I used to tell people, it was like a year's worth of things that God has been like teaching me and making me do, or just even like in my mind and my heart preparing me. So even when I said to people outside, I'm like, I don't exactly know, in my mind it didn't completely make sense. You know, but I just knew that it had to be from God because it was not going away. You know, it was not going away. It was just keep building. Like the urgency or the need to take a step of faith was like rising, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just try and see where this leads. I'm not really sure, and I'm also grateful for, like, first of all, my parents also, because for them to accept something like this, I'm sure it was not easy, because you know, like, logically, obviously, as a friend, if you had so much concern, just imagine for them, right? And also like my leadership at church also, because I was very involved in everything, and even when I told them, they were like, hey, if this is something that God's putting on your heart, we're all for it, you know. So even people around who were like confirming at the same time, like supporting in a way, you know, with this call, I think all that stuff kind of made it a little bit more easier to step into the unknown, because I did have people around me kind of, you know, hey, I'm excited to see what God's gonna do through your life. So yeah, I think that's something that helped me take that step also.
I think that's amazing, just like to take that step of obedience, and the way that you took it too, you know. And like you said, it took you almost a year, you know. And you know, it's like most people, when we tell the story, it's like every time we see throughout the Bible, like, you know, God asks people to step out, and we see two different things. Either they don't step out or they step out. It's like you have Jonah, who did not even step out; he ran up to a different place. But we have Peter, who actually stepped out of things, or Paul, who actually went forth. And I think there's a lot to rely on the calling that God gives you, because the word says your word is a light to my feet, and your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And so just like a lamp is on the feet, you won't be able to see the whole journey with that, but just the next few feet, you know. And that's the idea of being a lamp and the light that produces. So God never gives you the whole picture. Like God's not gonna, like, okay, in 2019 you're gonna go there, then you're gonna meet your wife, you're gonna do this. You know? It's not like a blueprint that He gives you, but you just go and just like, okay, God, I'm taking the step of faith because I believe that you are in this, you know, because I believe that this is from you. And when you do that, then He just shows the light every single part of the way, and then you see that go all the way down, and it sees how it reveals to what He's been planning, the picture that He's been painting, the connecting of the dots at the end. So I think that's like, you know, to be honest, your story is very inspiring personally to me too, because it is like, you know, sometimes when God tells me to do stuff, I'm like, are you sure about that? I was like, am I sure about that? You know, so right. I need more confirmations. I'm like, you know, I the doubt part creeps in me, and I think that's the same for most of us. You know, we always do that when God tells us to do something. We are always, a doubt part comes in, and we're like, we don't know. We are not sure what it is. Like we don't know if it's an intuition or is it a conviction from God. There's always a big difference. But the moment that we do that, we see that God honors that, and I think our God is a God who honors faith 100%. So. You know, when everyone takes the step of faith, I think there's always, you know, God taking 100 steps for you, you know, before you can even imagine. For you imagine taking that step, God already has all the bases covered.
I guess even when you are struggling to have that faith or the doubt and all that stuff, do that with Him, you know. Like, you don't have to have faith on your own strength also. You don't have to be like, oh no, I have to trust God. It's not something that you have to do by yourself. Like, see, for me, when God said about India and all, I'm like, God, I don't really want to. I want to be exactly where you want me to be in my life, but this is not exactly where I thought I would be. So it was a process. Like, I didn't want to go, but at the same time, I was not completely shut down to where God was leading me, you know? Because your no doesn't have to, or your desire to not go doesn't have to be like a complete shutdown from God, you know? Like, you can just do this with Him. Like, God is really asking you to do something that you've not thought of. I'm like, that is not what I planned. but if this is what you want me to do, like, I need you to help me with this because I don't want to do it. And, you know, we can be real with him, you know, because something that I've been thinking about lately is, you know, having faith does not mean being fake. You know, it's like you don't have to act like, oh yeah, I have to trust in God, so I'm gonna muster up whatever it is. Like, you don't have to be fake to say that you have faith. Like, you can go, like, one of my favorite, I forget what verse the thing it is, but it says there's a guy who wants to believe in the truth that Jesus is speaking, but he says, I want to believe, but help my unbelief. And that's the most honest prayer that we can tell God. It's like, I want to believe that you are going to be good, you're going to be faithful. Even in this season of my life, there are certain things. Yes, I just said, like, God's been so amazing in this past 4 years, every step of the way. There's so many stories, like, if I can just sit and, like, recollect and share, there's so many stories where I've seen God's faithfulness. We as a family, like my wife and I, we've seen God's faithfulness. But even there are moments right now where I'm like, God, I still want to believe, but help my unbelief, because there are times where I cannot do this, you know. Even to have faith, we need the help of the Holy Spirit to do that. Right. So, you know, like when you said, like, when God is asking you to step out of the boat, going back to that analogy, right? Like, all these doubts come, and you don't have to be like, oh, I need to battle these doubts by myself. I have to go with complete faith to God. No, it's okay. Go there, go to God with your doubts. Go to God with your thing and say, God, I want to do what you asked me to do. I want to be the person that you've called me to be, but this is what's going on in my mind. I need you to help me through this process. Because even to trust him, we need his help to do that.
And God wants us to be real.
Exactly.
Know? That's the part. Because I think it was you who shared a video of Pastor Zach Churian
preaching. I love Pastor Zach, man. Pastor Zach, shout out to you. I don't know if you're watching this, but great. Yeah.
But I saw this video of you shared with Pastor Zach Churian, where Pastor Zach is saying, "Who is God to you?" You know, how do you view God? And I was like, for a second, it made me think, because that's where I understand where like God appreciates us when we are real. God wants us to be real, because if we see God as, like, you know, the grumpy old guy who is like, oh no, if I go to him, he's gonna be mad at me, he hates it. No, absolutely he hates it, but he also is a loving father when it comes to it, and he's ready to embrace us in his love. And then, you know, the moment that we are ready, like, I mean, at times in my personal times, I tell God, I really don't know what I'm doing. Like, when in my moments of frustration, I'm like, I just want to drop everything. I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing. Where are you taking me? Yeah. And I think God wants us to be real with him. Because if we are being like the fake that, you know, like, you know, we showed people like, okay, yeah, we got everything figured out. But you can't play fake to God.
I mean,
you know?
he knows the real you anyway.
Anyways.
There's no point of bringing a fake version of yourself to him.
Yeah.
He knows the real you anyway, but he's not going to be like, oh, you're fake.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you want to bring to me? Okay.
But I think I think what we're missing, the layer that we're missing, it's not even the fact that people are being fake. I think there's a lot of fear, honestly. I think because in my thought process is, fear is not trusting yourself. Doubt is not trusting the person that you're trying to go to, right? Like, so in this case, if it's telling us what God is telling us, doubt is because we don't trust God, right? But fear, a lot of times, we don't trust ourselves, right? We don't trust that, okay, if I physically take this step, like, yes, there's a layer of it where we don't trust God in that sense. But I think a lot of times people that have, like, desires in your heart, like go to India, there's a lot of the fear that comes upon them. They trust God 100% though. But and it's those things that I was telling you earlier, right? Things like, we're afraid. What does the finances look like? And obviously these are earthly fears,
of course,
you know. And there's this eternal peace that we have,
of course,
and that peace is found in Jesus Christ. Right, but we are humans, and we live in this earthly body, this earthly form, right? So, like, how do we combat that? Because I'll be honest with you, there'll be times where I don't feel like I'm fake. I feel 100% times I feel like I'm authentic and real with God. But there's and I can't explain the fear. I don't know if that has happened to you guys before.
I get
too,
it.
Right?
I get it.
Yeah.
It's very real. Like, I like how you distinguish between doubt and fear. Because doubt is like when I like, oh, I don't know if I can trust God. That is doubt. Like, but then, you know. But the biggest thing with fear, man, like, there's a verse, right? Like, perfect love casts out all fear. Not some fear, not fear of this, fear of that. It says perfect love casts out all fear. You know. So even with fear, right? Like, what is the only thing that can take away fear is perfect love, and the only person that I know who can love us perfectly is Jesus.
Right.
Like, yes, I love my wife, I know she loves me, but there are times where we kind of piss each other off, and it's just, it is what it is. I'm sure you can, there are moments, and like I'm just saying that example because like a spouse would be like the closest person to you other than, so even that person, there are times where obviously we come back together and all that stuff is there, but perfect love, perfect love casts out fear.
Yeah.
And the only person who has perfect love is Jesus. So,
and you sharing that story, which makes Peter's, like the story we read about Peter and how he failed, makes that whole picture of him failing even more beautiful, right? Because Jesus does not withhold us from failing,
right?
But he's there. His presence is there, still there with us, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Because Peter's eyes are like, even though there was like so much fear, like I'm thinking as myself as a human being, I'm about to step out into the unknown, like literally step into a place where your whole life you were taught if you step in the water you would drown, and now to remove all this human ambition out of your mind, it's literally rewiring everything that how you were brought up to now, like you were saying, trust is perfect love, like this trust put our trust into something that we ultimately know would be better for us, right? Which makes the story of Peter even more bigger, like even more greater, which I'm like, I don't know how you guys feel. If Peter didn't fail, like that story wouldn't be as real to us.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think failure in God's eyes, God doesn't see failure,
Yeah.
God just sees that as a part of the journey.
Yeah.
He doesn't see like, okay, you are a failed person, because if God sees failure, then David was not worthy of doing anything, or David cannot be in the picture, or even Peter cannot be in the picture because he denied Jesus.
Yeah.
So God doesn't view failure as a sin or anything. He sees that as like a way to mold you.
Yeah.
And every time, like even we see David or Peter or Paul, these people fail multiple times in their life, but God doesn't give up on them. And I also that's why I think David wrote in Psalms 23, even though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you, God, are with me. And even though in our lowest points, God is with us. And like we're saying like a few weeks back, mountaintops inspire leaders, but valley lows mature them. Like in the valley low is where you are formed. Down in the valley where you are alone when you're with God, when nobody sees you, when everybody else is you look at the height of success. When you're in the valley where you're nothing, that's when God sees you. And it's the same God in the valley, it's the same God in the mountaintop. He never changes, only we change. And every time God takes us to another place or lifts us up, it's for His glory. And I think the failure part is actually very essential, because I believe if I hadn't failed in some of the things in life, I would never be here. And I've seen this in many interviews around the world, many people asking entrepreneurs this question: if you could go back in time and undo some of those things that you did, would you do it? And I would say almost 99% of the people who are asked, because the answer is no, they won't. Because what failed in the past is what led them to be there. And I feel like definitely failure is gonna be, it's not gonna be easy. It is definitely gonna be rusty. It's gonna hurt you, but also in the long run, it's gonna mold you into something that you want to become. So definitely, even because Peter failed there, Peter led the disciples. Peter led the first church. David fell, but still, God used David. So I think it's always, failure is gonna be one of the spots that we will always struggle with. But also, it's gonna be the place where God shines the most in us, and that's gonna be our getting out of the boat moment when we say, even in the valley, He is with me.
Yeah, like failure is not a setback; it's actually a springboard.
Absolutely.
For where God wants to take you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's actually good.
Tweet that.
Tweet that.
I don't use Twitter, but whoever does, tweet that.
Elon Musk uses Twitter.
But this whole talk about failure, right? Like the fear of failure is what I feel like stops many people from doing things that God is calling them, or even being in relationship with God too, because many people are like, well, if I start this relationship with God and then I failed, I don't think I feel like I cannot do this because I know I'm gonna fail. And in a good relationship, you're never afraid of failure. Because only when you don't have a good relationship with somebody, you're trying to impress them and always be on the tee, but see, right now, for example, because we're friends, I could say something wrong and we can all laugh about it and just kind of like go on from there, and then I'm like, oh man, I should have not done that, whatever, right? But then if I don't know you guys, I'm like trying to like sit all proper and like be on my best behavior, and
true.
you know, and this
So
very like, and I'm not gonna see you again. It's not like I do life with you, but when you have relationship with God or even with people, right? Like, or even the people that you are in relationship with, don't ever come to a place where whenever they mess up, try to make them feel like they're the worst people, because failure, accepting failure, knowing that it's okay to fail, like those are signs of like a good relationship or a good place to be in life. Because I feel like because if not, then that person is constantly under pressure to perform the right thing and do the right thing. And that pressure is going to basically make them not want to do anything. And let's just be the complacent. Let's just keep doing the regular thing. So like, let's not take any risk. Let's not, you know, let's stay the course, because everything is going to be right if you just stay the course.
Right.
You know? But then if you want to be more, there's risk involved or faith involved, and all these things could lead to a failure, which is, you know, like I think even Steve says, right, with God you cannot fail because nothing is wasted.
Right. Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
So
But so what? Let's break down failure, right? And let's break down failure in the context of our community and our culture, right? We have a fear of failure because we don't want to be humiliated.
Absolutely.
Or we don't want to be embarrassed.
Absolutely.
Right? We don't want, we always say like our culture is an honor shame culture, right? And we don't want people saying, oh, like going back to your story, what if you went to India and say in the eyes of most people you failed, right? I'm glad that you don't, your perception is not about people, but you know, even the Bible says like God looks at the heart, but people look at the outside, right?
Bro, legit, my dad literally told me about how people came up to him like, oh well, he's gone, he cannot take care of you guys anymore, and stuff like that. So and we even talk about like even on business and stuff, like taking risk, like, and I know we shouldn't always think about what people would say, but most of the time we're like, we take this big risk, what if at the end of the day we fail? So we're not scared of failure. What we're scared about is the embarrassment that comes with it.
So this is my take on that. So this is a principle that I hold. So what if works both ways? When you say what if I fail, what if you succeed? So there's the what if part is both ways. It's not just like what if I fail. If you fail, you fail. You learn something. Like there's a saying, you know, people who had never made a mistake never tried anything new. So definitely failure is trying something new. So like when we say like, okay, we want to start a coffee shop, and I'm like, you know, people will be, first thing is like, or if I say want to start a business, or I want to start a live streaming company, like you start looking at all the prospects of it, you see all the money aspect, you'll be like, oh nah, this is too much. What happens if I fail? When you take that risk, it's either going to work in your favor, or with God on your side, I believe everything works in your favor. And I think it just goes forward from there. So it's always like that what if works both ways, you know, and that when the moment you take that, it's up to you to take that decision, because God is not going to come to you and say, oh, take the decision, go. No.
God is so loving in a way that he just lets us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I see when God looks at us, he sees like a little child. That's what I think, you know. I think like God's like, you know, like when a kid is like playing with blocks or he knocks down something, like it's cute, you know, but then like as we think as from an adult perception, if like we were to do that now, I'll be like, Debbie, what are you doing? like
why can't you put a block on top of another block?
Why are you drawing on the walls? And like, but when you see a kid do that, there's like this kid's nature that we see as like cute and like we adore, you know. And I think that's how God sees us. Like God
absolutely. I think God doesn't do dictatorship.
Yeah.
You know, He leaves everything to us. Because if we had to do dictatorship, He'd have to create us. You know, we could have been robots. You know, just doing everything what He says. But He gives us free will so that we can do. He gives it up to us. It's our decision whether we choose to reject Him or deny or accept Him. It's up to us. And you know consequences of that decision, I think we just live with that.
We got to be careful where this podcast is going though.
Why? Let's do it. I thought you said we're going to talk about whatever.
You're breaking the cups out. What are you talking, dude?
What is cups? Why are we having cups?
We need some time about that. We'll have a part 2.
This is part 3?
This is part 2.
A deep theological. I don't know.
In the comments, let us know.
Let us know what you really want to talk about. Oh man, but yeah, I don't know. Do you?
No,
what
but
were you saying?
kind of when you were saying that, I remembered. There's Pastor Irvin McManus. So he says about how many people view God as the guy who like takes away the 99 options and give you one option to like do this life. But if you look at the tree, like when the creation, there's a garden full of trees. It was only one tree that he said not to eat from. And because there was a choice, you could make that choice to love him or obey him or not to obey him. He did not make like 90, you cannot eat from 99 trees and there's the only tree you can eat. No, he gives you like so many options, a garden full of options.
Yeah.
And there's one tree that is that don't eat from. And many people were like, why did he have to put that tree? Because if that tree was not there, you didn't have the choice to not obey him or obey him. It gives you a choice. It gives you freedom.
Absolutely.
So yeah, when you were saying that, I just remembered.
No, I think that's just brilliant, and it's also amazing. I think when the grand scheme of God thinks, I think it's just elaborate, and we just don't understand that. I think we always want to do things like we have this conviction that okay, if I do things my way, I can make it work, and which is not bad. But when God says this is the way, there's always a difference in that. Because I'll tell you the biggest example in the Bible here that we look for is Jesus and the disciples. Jesus trained 12 disciples, okay? He trained 12 of them to go preach the gospel. He walked with them for 3.5 years, led them through everything. These 12 people, 23 years later, we're still talking about that. So isn't that like the breaking the conventional model of business? Because we see that, let's take any business for example, or any legacy, more than 100 or 200 years, what's the family names that we are seeing? Like we see Bill Gates in this era, and Steve Jobs, and maybe Elon Musk, like the top entrepreneurs we see. Then there's the Saudi Arabian families, like all the Middle Eastern family there. They all came in the last 50 to 70 years, who are the richest. Ambani's, yeah.
Don't forget India.
But again, that's just the last 3 generations.
Yeah.
There is nothing in this world that has lasted for 23 years other than the gospel, other than the Holy Spirit and Jesus, the move of God. So isn't that like Jesus just broke the conventional model of how people think and just built something on with just 12 people? And when I think of that, I feel like that just blows off all kind of minds for me, because for a second I'm like, damn, that is the best way to break the ways of the world and to become something that he wanted to be, and the legacy that he built with 12 people.
Right.
We can't even build legacy with 3 generations. The 4th generation just destroys the whole wealth that everybody else made, and there's like it just goes down. But we see a God who actually came down, who sacrificed for us, trained 12 disciples for 3.5 years, spoke the word of God, did miracles, did healings, spoke about the future, and we still speak about it. And to me, that is the greatest evidence that God is living. If some atheist tells me, I'm like, this is my first statement. It's like, do you actually look at the world? 23 years, there's one thing that has not changed is the move of God. And we see everything else changed. Like we see the whole continents have changed, but the move of God has not. So, and to me, that is legacy. That's what God wants to build. That's what God is envisioning. And we just don't see the full picture, because we just see the now, but he sees the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah. I think
mic drop with no mic.
Yeah. Don't break the mics today. A little too expensive. Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot of things like in understanding the full context of God and what he wants for our life. We only see a small glimpse of the whole, like we were saying earlier, like the whole picture of what God wants for us. And I think as you mature in your faith and your walk with the Lord, the more that you build like that relationship, that trust with the Lord. And it's such a beautiful picture. I mean, even sitting next to both of you guys, seeing a beautiful bell.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I mean, I'll be honest, like how both of them even have pushed me from my own comfort zone, and being able to have new revelation of the Lord, through that, and giving me a fresh new perspective. And I think it's really encouraging. I just want to encourage every person that's watching on our podcast, and like we do this for you guys, because this is a real conversations at the end of the day. Because what you guys see is probably a well-produced podcast. We'll see if it's well produced.
Our production manager.
We'll see.
Our video producer is laughing behind the lens.
We'll see. But there was a journey that all of us had to take with the Lord, and there was so many vulnerable moments. There was so much intimate moments with the Lord. I mean, there were moments, and I'm speaking from my own life, where we were crying and pleading with the Lord and asking the Lord, what does the next steps sort of look like? And I personally come to a point in this where I want to ask both of you guys, where it's not even asking the Lord questions anymore. It's literally just enjoying the walk that I'm going on with Him. It's like I don't even care if I ask the Lord questions. I'm just Lord, I'm just here with you. And it's so freeing. I don't know if y'all feel like that.
That is what when He created Adam and Eve, that was the whole point.
Yeah.
He didn't create them. Yeah, He said, you can take care of the garden. All these things were there. But at the end of the day, let's do life together. He would come, go on walks. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
The struggling, the toil to win bread, that came after the fall,
100%.
The
Right.
original intent of creating humanity was to do life with God.
Yeah.
To reign with God, to rule with God. So, yeah, like you said, but before I go in there, right, I know you said about both of us and how we helped you, but the point that you're doing this right now, because when Beautiful Ways first started, and you were one of the people that I talked to, and you really fanned it into flames, helped me design the logo and everything,
You do the same thing with Bellwethers too.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm really good at pushing other people's visions.
Exactly, right? So we could have had the idea, we could have just sat with it, but we needed somebody like Ruben to, I'm yo, let's do this, let's not just keep it as an idea, because there's so many people who have ideas and they might just sit and, Paul did what Paul could because there was a Barnabas, Paul, everybody knows Paul, but dude, there was a Barnabas who was with him. There was other people in his journey that, who were,
John Mark.
John Mark, and different people who were journeying with him in different seasons of life, who helped him to be the person he is, right?
True.
So the fact that both of us are here also is I'm just grateful for you, that God put you in both of our lives.
Absolutely.
With Bellwethers, with starting what it is, and
Don't make
with
me cry now.
I'm just saying,
Where are the tissues at?
Yeah, that's it. Added to what Abby was saying is and that's where collaboration is built. Where we are doing something we're trusting. Go ahead.
No, finish that.
Oh, where we are able to trust. When we come to the room, it's hey bro, I have this vision. And we always joke about this, that we did. The first idea of Avda when the business conference came from dosha. Bro, that's the most Indian way, an Indian business idea.
Dosha and dreaming.
Yeah? Dosha
and dreaming.
Yeah, I was that was the first time you're seeing a big masala dosha, so I had to take him to Irving. Yeah, Saranamad. I took it to Irving.
I've seen
it was after Bass.
Yeah.
I think it was Feb 2022. I was
that was your first time going there?
No, I mean,
that's his first time having a big masala.
No, I have had that before.
I had the video there when you were looking like a kid.
I'm just
You're
excited.
I'm
just really excited. I just love my masala dosha.
Yeah, that was his first
my narrows.
Yeah.
So that's where it started?
Yeah, that's where it started. I was I took a kid out. It was kind of taking a kid, giving your kid a masala dosha.
How did that become Avada?
That's a fine story. So I was I had this idea after Bass in 2022, Feb 2022. I was praying that there's this thing of collaboration for business people that God had put in my mind, and every time I pray about that, God gives me different confirmations, but I was very skeptical and scared. The only reason being, I wasn't well established. I was just stepping into business. My excuse was, God, there's hundreds of others who are better than me, just like in the Indian community, just in Dallas, maybe just in Carrollton, you'll find 100 people better than me. Why me? And every time God used to come up with that, I was I don't know what to talk. I don't know who to talk to. And then I was maybe I'll talk to Ruben. I was hey bro, you wanna buy? I'll let me buy your masala dosha. Let's go there. So that's where the whole idea started. We spoke about it, and he was down, and then we prayed about it, and then we said let's start this. Let's take a step forward, and which ended up being something that we never imagined would be as successful as this. And we see the results of that, when multiple people collaborated into the new business ventures from there, was just purely mind blowing for us, because we saw how God could move. And I was like, I'm back to the point, like, you know, to have a collaborator who you can trust. I think that's very, very important, because just like Paul and Barnabas had a trust, Peter and John had a trust, Paul and Timothy had a trust. There was always trust as a crucial factor when you're tag teaming with people.
And kind of going back to what you said, you know, like now you don't even want to ask questions, you just want to do life with God. But it's not like God does not want to just do life with one person. He wants to do life with his all children and see all his children come together. Like I feel like this is what.
And it makes it so fun, right?
Exactly.
Like I just want to just take a moment. Like thank you guys for all the nice words. But I just want
masala
after this.
It's on Bellwether. It's on Beautiful Bell.
Beautiful Bell.
Yeah, sponsor.
I guess we both are buying for him.
I really just want to again, I'm addressing the audience again, but if you are 19, 20, 21, 22, 25, even contemplating what your 20s look like going into your 30s, right? We rush into everything, and we want to have everything figured out, you know, and we don't even give ourselves a grace of understanding and knowing and to, even like we're saying, grow or take risk, do these things, right? And even your spiritual journey, right? A lot of times what I've learned just in my own personal walk, like our life is not just a sticky pad. It's actually a whole book, like it's a storybook. You know, everybody wants those like, you know, big moments, right? And they just put on their wall and they just remember those moments. But what I look like in my life now is I go to this chapter and like I get to hang out with Ebby, and we did the Beautiful Ways podcast. Now this chapter of my life I get to hang out with Matthews, and we did the Bellwether stuff. And even like different chapters, you meet all these different people, and you have all these amazing connections.
Beautiful Bell together.
Exactly. Everything like you meet all these amazing people, people who love the Lord. And these are just like, one day it's like a big storybook of just all these amazing opportunities that you had with the Lord, but all the amazing people that the Lord has brought into your own life, you know. And I want to address like all of the 21, 22, 23, 24 people. Like your life is not about just being relevant in that moment.
Absolutely.
You know, we always talk about a relationship, and I think the deep, most rooted relationships have the most authentic results.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add on to that, like anyone who's like in their 20s or listening to this, take the risk. That's what your 20s are for, you know. I started this podcast like when God gave me a vision when I was 22. It was like it's 4 years. I'm turning 26 this year, and I see that all the way back. I am so glad that I took that risk. I am just so glad that I took that one step, that moment, saying, "All right, God, I'm gonna do it." That's like, and I really don't know how many people this could have impacted. Like I'm saying from a very humble perspective, because I just make these videos, put it up. We just make this.
That's what we can do.
That's the only thing we can do. You know, we have to know, like, we never know what the end results is. Maybe down the lane, like a few years back, a few years later, we might see.
If nothing else, I'll go back and watch these. I'm like, oh, that was fun conversation.
Honestly,
see now I see where I get the old views on some of my videos are coming from. But I'm saying, like, the 20s, just utilize it, just take risks, make mistakes, and it's fine. Just be under the Lord, just speak to God, just be under His guidance, and find a mentor, be under him or her, and just like do life like that. Because don't waste your 20s, because you're gonna regret that in your 30s, and then you're gonna regret that down the lane. So I am so glad. Like, I've made a lot of mistakes in the last 5 years, and I am so glad that I made those. Were they dumb decisions? Absolutely, you know, really dumb ones. But I also see I've learned a lot of stuff from those. But back to like what we were saying, like, you know, with sidetrack, like, you know, doing life with God, you know, like you said, the walk at the Garden of Eden, and I think that's very specific, because we see, like, you know, what the first Adam lost through sin, the last Adam regained us through his sacrifice.
Last Adam, as in Jesus, for the ones who don't get the points, but
absolutely, yes. So because of his sacrifice, like, we are able to take that walk, just like you said, with Him forever, you know. And I've noticed something, that with the Lord, like, the more you understand Him, like, you understand His nature, it is love, and that's when you understand Him more. Because when you understand His love, you understand His nature, because that's what He does, you know. Definitely there are guidelines. You cannot sin, definitely, absolutely, but there's always or loving arms that are wide open for us to come back. And I was reading this, like, I think a couple of weeks back, I was talking to some of my friends, and we're talking about this verse. Jesus was full of grace and full of truth. And, you know, I was like, I really love that verse, because what's grace without truth, and what's truth without grace? And like a couple of weeks back at Livingstone's, I saw this paper, someone was telling me, grace without truth is meaningless, and truth without grace is just mean. So both of them coming together is what enables us to do that life together with God, because He's full of grace, He's full of truth. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot be just walk in the grace, or you cannot just walk in truth. You need both of it. And I think that's what makes our that walk with God more interesting, because we can go all the way back to what happened in the Garden of Eden and still have the same relationship with Him. Just come to Him every time, like walk with Him, talk with Him. Like I do this habit, like whenever I do, I try to get out and I try to just talk with others, like, hey God, good morning. It's like, you know, I was like, I love you. And I just start praying, you know. And sometimes even if like recently, from the very recent times, my secret place has become my car, because whenever I'm driving somewhere, I start speaking in tongues.
My favorite place, man. Same.
Yeah. Oh, bro. It's like I love my secret place. I love my closet where I do that, but I also love when I do it in my car too, because I'm saving, so I'm not wasting any time just thinking of any stupid stuff, but I'm just thinking about God, I'm focused on God. And just like that, you just learn to, and I think the more important aspect of what you said was, it's just not just doing that 15-minute prayer or 5-minute prayer that you pray in the morning, and then the next prayer that you pray at 8 p.m. for your Kudumba Prarthana, but it's more than
family
that.
Prayer for all the non-Malayalis.
Kudumba Prarthana, family prayer. But, you know, I think especially in the Malayu circle, we've actually enclosed God as like that 5-minute prayer in the morning and the 15-minute evening family prayer. That's it. And other than that, we just don't know how to talk to God. And we think we got to do 21 days of fasting to
part 3 of the podcast coming out.
That's part 3. You know, we got to do fasting. We're like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. But at the core of it, you know, it's just like talking to God. And as like one of my mentors was telling me this, if you like a girl, you know, if you just talk to her once and you don't talk to her for 3 months, you know, will you ever get to know her? Absolutely not. That's the same way with God. You can't. Okay, you're cutting that out.
If the shoe fits, wear it.
You're talking with a lot of conviction right now.
I'm not talking. This is nothing to do with the girl.
Like Steve John said, send applications.
Okay, we're cutting that spot out. You know.
That's what you said in that podcast too. It remained.
Yeah, I forgot to do that.
This one's actually even funnier.
No, cut this out, Steve. I don't want Steve to feel like, oh, I'm not funny.
No. What he's saying right now.
Yeah. Probably Steve will be the first person to share this.
What he's sharing right now. Go ahead. Tell us more.
Actually, a very important thing. Sorry we distracted you from
Tell
all
us
this.
more. Go ahead. What you're sharing is very important, actually.
Yeah. No, my whole idea is like I'm not giving dating tips, but anybody wants to take it, this is your chance.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, don't blame it on me. Disclaimer. Hey, you said lose the cups, you know.
What cups?
I don't know where this podcast is going anymore. Is this a dating?
How long has
a relationship?
1 hour a day.
Oh my gosh!
I think we should start, you know, a new podcast, dating.
No, it's okay. Let's come back to the analogy.
Yeah, we're getting too many ideas now.
Okay.
Yeah, but you just have to talk to that person who you like to get a relationship with them. And the same way is with God, because you talk to Him once when you do the altar call in your church, and then 3 months later, 4 months later, something happens in your life, you get problems, you're like, oh God, where are you? Then you come back to God. And I just don't think that's the way that God wants you to be. It's a steady relationship. It's an everyday thing. So as you build that relationship, I think that's how you get to know Him as a father. That's when you can actually live in the freedom, just like you can walk in the garden, just like Adam and Eve walked in the garden, you can walk with Him in your daily walks of life. And it's all about that relationship. It's all about that sacrifice. And absolutely, there's a lot of sacrifice in that. It doesn't come easily, you know. You have to sacrifice. You have to keep a part of your time. You have to put your phone on do not disturb and just sit in His presence. You have to cut down some stuff, it's all about obedience too. And when He says that, you got to obey, and it's out of that love that we have for Him, and that's what builds the relationship. And He loved us first, and what we build on that love, is what lasts, and that's what is gonna last even in eternity too. So yeah, but
Nice.
Yeah.
I think we went over an hour, which is great. If you're still listening and watching, thank you.
yeah, do follow Beautiful Waste, you know.
And Bellwethers. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's it. No other
Bellwethers.
Bellwethers. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess like maybe we can kind of wrap up. I don't
Yeah.
know how much more time you want to go.
Well, yeah,
we can go as long
yeah.
as we
But
want.
I mean, if we're wrapping up, I do want to also
Okay.
just give a shout out to Elsa's page too.
Oh yes,
To-
of course. Follow
yeah.
my wife's page. It's just her name, Abdullah Elizabeth Philip.
Yeah.
She does a lot of wonderful things over there also. But before we wrap up, I feel like at least for the people who are watching on my channel, they might be like, what is this Bellwethers thing? I know I asked you like that day when we were driving to like Forney because we had like an hour long drive. I was asking
Road
like,
trip.
so what do you do as Bellwethers? Would you want to explain like the creative?
Oh,
You
yeah,
know, like
absolutely.
just like a little bit, just so people know what this is.
Right, absolutely. So what Bellwethers is basically, Bellwethers means it means trendsetter. So it is kind of like in a pack of goats, in a set of goats, the one who's the leader has a bell at his neck. So that's what bellwether means. It's like the lead goat. So it also means
Lead goat.
Yeah, lead
Greatest
goat.
of all time. Okay.
Hey,
I really
Lead goat.
I like the name a lot.
yeah,
I was a
it's,
big fan of the name.
it's a dope name.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would love it too. So so in a pop culture way, it means trendsetter, and it means setting up trends and doing something that's out of the way the
Yeah.
culture is. So that's what Bellwethers means, and absolutely and what we do is definitely equip and empower. That's our basic vision, where we equip and empower leaders, and over 3 verticals that we have: commerce, creative, and church. So basically, commerce is basically where we do the business part. Whereas
That's where Avida comes in.
Avida comes in, and everything that we did with Avida, and all the things that we are doing with Avida too. And the creative side is basically where we equip creatives. We help out creatives, which we are working on some stuff, which is like if you're a photographer, videographer, producer, or or even a graphic designer, anything in the creative space. And even if it's anything with even software designs are now like referred as creative software design these days.
If you're a chef, if you're a barber.
chef,
Yes,
painter, poet.
if creative is a part of your
Right.
daily life or what you're 9 to 5, yes, you're in that category. So that's what creative does, where we help them out, where we connect them with people, and it's like build a community. And definitely the third one is church. It's not a church. Bellwether's church is not a church, but it's more of a church community where we
The
come
capital
together.
C church.
Yeah.
Like you're helping the bigger church.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're just helping them out in the bigger perspective, helping them out with what the resources they need, helping our worship leaders and helping our churches to go preach the gospel, engage in the gospel. So that's our 3 verticals, and we're doing a lot of stuff. We are actually, I mean, to be honest, where we see like back in 2020 when I started this, to where we are right now, I see like it's grown a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely humbled by it, and I'm so glad like I said that yes to God, and definitely, and we see like and everything that we do, and I think it's all about that obedience when we say yes and we take that step. So definitely, please do keep us in your prayers, and that I think that's all we can ask for, because it's definitely it's not easy to do something out of the box and out of the convention and the norms. So but
And for everybody who is watching in the Indian context, right? These guys are doing this mainly in America with like all the people here, because a funny thing. I've seen a lot of these things happen in India. Like you guys know Ricky, right?
Yeah.
Like with Outkast, and then Bonnie Andrews, like who was in India, who's now here. Like with Live Jam and everything they do.
Yeah.
And so they do connect with all these guys who are doing stuff in India. You might be familiar, if you're watching from India, you might be familiar with more of those guys, and they're doing something similar like that in America and stuff like this too. So I mean, I'm gonna leave all their socials and whatnot in the description. You can check out more things, but I love seeing this happen, because when I was in America, none of this was happening.
Yeah.
It was just like every church for themselves.
Yeah.
You do your own thing. and sometimes competition, you know, like my church is better at singing than your church, whatever, you know, like this silly things, okay? So to see this happen in India, I'm like, oh man, like India is way ahead of where we are, you know, when I went to India. And then now seeing something like this happen here, I'm like, man, this is awesome. And then I see how you guys get on Zoom calls with Ricky and, you know, like with Jason, Jason too, right? So church social box. So like there are people doing amazing things, and if you just stumbled across this podcast maybe on my channel or like Bellwethers or wherever you're watching, and if you're like, oh, I don't know if anybody else is doing what I'm doing, hey, there are people. So definitely reach out, connect. That's the whole point that we exist. So you can just DM like, hey, I'm a creative, I do this, and I don't really know. In India, there's like Spikenard. So if you're in India, you message me, I might most probably like send you to Spikenard because they do a lot of similar things with this, and Outcast and all these guys. So we're here to empower and equip, right? That's what. And I know I don't have like a cool tagline like that with beautiful ways, but
that's cool enough. That's cool ways. I like that.
But so that's kind of what I wanted to just. I mean, we talked about some amazing things, but just wanted to give some context to people towards the end. We're faithful enough to watch it till the end.
But just to add on to something that Abeyson was saying, especially when you step out of faith and when you do something like Beautiful Ways or Bellwethers, it takes a lot of faith, and definitely it is not easy. There's a lot of doubts. There's a lot of ifs that comes in, and I want to encourage you that even if you're such a person, just keep doing what you're doing. And there are people who are watching your content. What you put out there is valuable. It's 1,000% valuable, whatever you put out there. And every person who watches it may not be a subscriber, but you are reaching out to someone in some way through the digital media age. And when you do that, you're fulfilling the Great Commission, where you're preaching the gospel to everyone all across the earth. So you might be sitting in India, someone from Brazil might be seeing it, or you might be sitting in Dallas, someone from Delhi might be seeing it, but either way, whatever you do is making an impact in the kingdom. It doesn't have to be with 10K views or 1 million views, but even if even if one person sees that, that is a kingdom impact. And in the kingdom, it matters a lot. So what you're doing matters, your content matters, it matters more than to others, it matters so much to God. And I would just want to let you that today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for watching the Beautiful Bell podcast.
We still don't know what that means.
And thank you so much. I mean, there were so many great things, and continue to follow us all on our socials, and we'll be back soon. And we just thank you guys for all you're doing. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Yay. Are we gonna design like a logo with both of us, both the logos? Okay.
It's over, bro.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you need, bro?